So good morning, Debbie.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for agreeing to speak with us today with the Toronto Knitters Guild. This is for our Faux Frolic 2022, and we're just trying to reach out to our community and get to know our vendors and our partners and introduce you to our Frolic attendees. So thank you so much for this. My name is Simone Sheriff. I am the social media coordinator for the Toronto Knitters Guild. So any of the posts that you've seen over the past couple of years, that was likely me. Let's get started.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here and to get to connect with some of the Toronto knitters again. We have been participants at the Real Frolic in the past, but it's actually been a few years since we made it down to Toronto, so it's good to be able to reconnect a little bit.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've been able to get around. So Debbie is with Sweet Paprika Designs, and why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, maybe about Sweet Paprika?
Sure, yeah. So Sweet Paprika is myself and my sister Elizabeth are the main forces behind the business right now. We started the business together actually 15 years ago this month, so it's been quite a long journey to get to where we are now. We started out very part-time, very much like Elizabeth's idea was, let's create a little business using the skills that we have to maybe earn enough money to keep ourselves in nice yarn. You know, that was the
I like that goal. That's a very practical objective.
Yeah, and we tried a lot of different things when we first started out. We were doing knitting on commission. We did kind of selling at craft fairs of finished items, that kind of thing. And we really kind of just were open to what might work and what ended up being the best kind of fit for what our skill set is and what, you know, could financially be viable as a business. Was doing hand-dyed yarn and our own knitting and crochet patterns that we were starting out just when Ravelry was taking off. So the idea of being able to sell a self-published PDF download was pretty new at the time.
Yeah.
So of course, it's something we're all totally used to.
You're pioneers,
yeah.
You're innovators.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that was a time when I was really excited about the world of knitting opening up for me personally, because, you know, I grew up in the 90s and early 2000s knitting out of like beehive booklets from the 70s and 80s and whatever you get from the library, and maybe once or twice an interweave magazine with something a little more up to date, you know.
Glad I wasn't the only one.
So that's where we were at the beginning. We were dyeing yarn in our kitchen. Elizabeth was doing all of the coding of our website from scratch, because that was a thing that you could do more easily in those days. And her husband was involved for a while. We have another younger sister who also knits, who was much more involved at the beginning and then went off to do her own thing afterwards, but she still designs patterns for us sometimes. So it's really a family business. And so kind of fast forward to where we are now. I moved to Montreal. We started out in Ottawa. I moved to Montreal to study at Concordia. Elizabeth decided to move here as well. We got too big to dye in our kitchen, so we rented a studio space. And we've had a couple of different studio moves to places that have worked better for us. And so now we have a dye studio in the St. Henry neighborhood in Montreal, and we have a part-time employee right now because Elizabeth and I both had babies this year. So she covered my things. Yeah. She covered my mat leave and has stayed on because we're working less hours right now, Elizabeth and I. So she's really holding down the fort for us. And we are really excited to be offering more Canadian sourced yarns, much more than we did at the beginning, and to be doing more collaborations and working with other designers and stuff as well. So trying to expand our network. Yeah, I guess that's us in a nutshell. I'll let you actually ask the question now.
There's so many questions. How did you start knitting, and how did you get into crafting?
So my mom was for sure very crafty. So we, she had a little toy loom that she would set up. She had a big loom, floor loom, and she had a toy loom that she set up, and we would weave little doll blankets and things with. And I remember her helping me learn to sew doll clothes on her sewing machine when I was very young. But she didn't knit or crochet. The weaving was her yarn thing. So it was my grandmother on my dad's side who was a avid knitter and taught all of her grandchildren who were interested how to knit. So and she didn't live in the same city as us at the time. So she came to visit, taught us the basics, and then sent us a box full of, it was all, patterns, acrylic or whatever, what yarn, but it was like a treasure chest to us of some yarns and those pattern booklets, and we just took off and went from there.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
And the name, I love your name.
Yeah, so that's actually heritage from the other side. Our mom's side of the family is Hungarian. So paprika is a very important spice in Hungarian cooking. And we were throwing around kind of spitballing name ideas. And Elizabeth's husband, Paul, who was part of the business at the beginning, is very much a kind of throw at anything goes. And he was talking about chicken paprikash, which is like a Hungarian noodle dish. We're like, what does that have to do with yarn? But we were like, but the paprika part, like that's, something that we can hang on to a little bit. And, speaking of other craftiness that it came in my mom's family, Hungarian embroidery often features the paprika pepper in a very traditional embroidery style. So that's where our logo is derived from, like those kind of embroidery.
The two sides of your these together. Oh, that's so beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned you're working with a lot more Canadian, I guess, I don't know what to call them, Canadian dyers and Canadian, I guess, manufacturers of yarn, breeders?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess farmers is what I would call them.
Yeah, is that the word I want?
They're raising the sheep, farmers or shepherds. We really, we got started with dyeing because we were interested in doing it for ourselves to be able to do the, just as a personal interest. And we quickly realized we could dye more yarn than we could ever use in the, the amount of time it takes to dye yarn and the amount of time it takes to knit yarn are kind of very different. We're building up a stash of hand-dyed yarn, and our knitting friends were asking to buy it off of us. So we were like, okay, this could be something we can fit on our business if we can figure out the suppliers and all of this stuff. And so when we first started, we were working mostly with a distributor out of the US, so imported yarn, and we didn't really have a lot of connections with any farming community or local yarn, and it honestly wasn't something people talked about that much 15 years ago. So it was something we were interested in. We did our first foray into Canadian made yarn was an alpaca and wool blend, because we were able to connect with an alpaca farmer, and we said, okay, let's try this. It was a beautiful yarn, but it didn't sell that well for us. I mean, we sold it eventually, but it was like, okay, maybe this isn't exactly what we want to do. And we ended up connecting with a woman called Allison Brown, who has a farm outside of Norwood, Ontario, who raises beautiful, beautiful fiber. She has a flock of sheep that she really breeds for the fiber characteristics. So we work with her to get fleece every year, and then we send it to Wellington Fibers, who is another vendor at the Frolic often. I'm sure your attendees will be familiar with Wellington Fibers. So they do the spinning for us. And that's a yarn that we do as a special yearly thing, because Allison shears her fleece, or shears her sheep once a year. We get whatever our fleece order is for that year, and then once we sell it, it's gone. So that's really a special
That's good to know. What's the name of that?
So that we have actually, this is one of the things that I actually brought down. So we have one skein left from last year's batch.
Oh my goodness.
We call it Norwood, the yarn, because that's where her farm is.
Yeah.
And this is a DK weight that we dye in kind of a semi-solid tonal kind of colors.
That's
and then we also do a fingering weight from her that we do mini skein sets, which I just dropped of. So we do kind of, some of them are more gradients. This one is more like would be good for Fair Isle or color work, these ones.
Your colors are so rich.
Thank you. Yeah, so these ones we do pre-orders usually in around June for people to say like, this is the color I want, because we have such a limited supply. And then whatever we have left over, we, because we, if this is too much detail about this, you can cut me off. But we get the fleece is sheared usually in April, and then it goes to the mill. The mill takes usually until at least mid-July, early August to get to spinning it for us. And then we have the time to dye it. So
wow.
It's really like a process that
like April to fall.
Yeah, and then which actually kind of works out nicely for us that we have it for the fall, which is when a lot of people are looking for yarn. But yeah, it's a bit of a process. So
this is all stuff that you had to learn along the way, I suppose. There's no sort of yarn store 101 course that you
No, I mean, people are talking about it a lot more, and there's more people like Anna Hunter from Long Way Homestead, and people like Alexina from Lemlen here in Quebec, who is very much into spinning and learning about those different characteristics of local farms or locally grown fleeces here. So there's a lot more interest in the community, which I am so excited about. That it's something that people are talking about more. But one of the things is there's not a lot of capacity for processing in Canada. We don't have a lot of mills. So that limits to some extent how much farmers can focus on making breeding or raising sheep for production here in Canada. And a lot of Canadian wool gets shipped to China basically to be
processed and then bring it back. So for any of our entrepreneurial members,
yes, you want to start a farm? Yes.
That's excellent. And I know you design as well. So did your grandmother teach you the design, or did
she didn't teach us so much, but definitely was an inspiration, I guess. So she came up with all kinds of off the wall knitted stuff. She played with color and pattern. She was an artist. She used the most wacky color combinations sometimes, but she always was creating stuff for herself, and so definitely was an inspiration in that way. And also I remember the very first thing I knit was a hat that she just kind of wrote out, this is how you make a hat, you know. She had it in her head, the basics of how to create the shaping and that kind of thing. So we definitely learned with the idea that you could have that ability to create for yourself, not just knit from a pattern. Yeah,
that's excellent. That's really encouraging. And isn't it great how our parents and our grandparents just have all the recipes and the answers to everything? It's just up there. Yeah, that's amazing. So you said you had brought down a couple things to show to us.
Yeah.
I don't know if you wanted to share any of that.
Yeah, I mean, I just shared the Norwood and Allura. The other thing that I have is I have some yarn from Romy. I know you mentioned that you wanted to talk about the Circle R connection. So I'll show you that in a second. I'll tease that a little bit. But this is a prototype for what is going to be our exclusive Frolic colorway this year. So
I was going to ask. I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I'm happy to hear.
So we're partnering with Michelle Porter, who's a designer who's making a beautiful, I just saw the photos recently that she's done of a beautiful shawl using our Minuet yarn. So this is a superwash merino base. It's one of our, we do still carry imported yarns because superwash merino is not easily come by in Canada. So it's one of our imported yarn bases. And so she's done the prototype in one of our standard colors. And then we're doing some of this exclusive color that we'll have for frolic attendees. I'm not sure how well you can see it. It's kind of a periwinkle blue with little lavender highlights.
Beautiful. And does it have a name yet?
No, it doesn't. So it will by the time we have it ready for the frolic, but if you have a suggestion, let me know.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. You said it's a minuet?
Minuet is what we call the yarn base. So it's a DK weight, superwash merino. Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's excellent.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I brought down, so this is one of my projects on the needles right now. I don't know if that's focusing. So
Yes,
this is a sweater by a designer, I can't remember her real name, but she goes by Tellybean Knits. And it's using our Winfield yarn base, which is from one of the other Canadian ones, sourced from Circle R Lamb. So I told you the whole story about the seasonality of the yarn that we were working with, and we sell on our website, but we also wholesale to yarn shops. So if we're in a relationship with a yarn shop, it's really, we can't just say you can only get this once a year. I mean, we could, but it's not an easy thing for somebody to work on stocking. So we were looking for a Canadian farmer who had enough yarn and or enough fleece and enough availability to that we could stock it year round. And so we connected with Romy from Circle R Lamb, and she has a larger flock and she shears several times a year. So she manages her farm quite differently. And it means that we have more flexibility in terms of, I can just email her and say, we need 20 pounds of your 2-ply, please send it to me. And, you know, it doesn't, there is still some give and take in the supply chain there, but it's a lot more consistent. And so we can stock that year round and have that available. So that's the yarn that I just showed you. Yeah.
You and your sister spoke at a guild meeting, I think this past year.
Yeah.
And Romy also spoke at a guild meeting, I think, or at last frolic.
I think we were at the same meeting.
Was it
we were there together? Yeah.
And so that's when I learned about this relationship, and I've been in love with both of you ever since. And I've started following sheep farmers and alpaca farmers, and it's definitely becoming more and more popular, supplying us yarnies with the fiber and the fleece to make some homegrown yarn. So I think it's excellent.
Yeah, for sure. It's been really heartening to see how many people are really getting more curious about where their yarn comes from and who is behind it and what the economics of it are in terms of growing things in Canada and how do we make that work.
When was your first frolic? Do you remember?
I'm pretty sure that it was 2013.
Oh, wow.
I'm gonna say, because that's the year that my sister's first child was born, and I'm pretty sure she was in the early stages of her pregnancy the first year that we were there. Maybe it had a little morning sickness.
Wow, that is dedication. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I just have a couple more questions for you. I was on your website and I saw something about gnomes.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the gnomes?
Yeah, for sure. So your frolic attendees may be familiar with Sarah Shira, who goes by the name Imagined Landscapes. So she's another Canadian designer. She's from out west, and she specializes in all things gnome. So little knitted gnomes, bigger knitted gnomes, gnome earrings, anything that you can think of for a knitted gnome, she probably has it. And she is doing a big kind of gnome party this year with a year-long knit along called Year of Gnomes, where anyone can, I think the rule is you have to knit a gnome within 1 calendar month, and then it can be from any of her patterns and you can enter it in her knit along. One of our favorite customers who we have met, I can't remember how, but she's in BC, and we have this great relationship. She emails us and tells us ideas, and she said, hey, have you heard about the Year of Gnomes knit along? And we said, no, we haven't. We'll look into it. And so we started doing little gnome sets. So for each little gnome, you need only a small amount of yarn. So we're doing 25-gram mini skeins in either 3 or 4 colors, because some of the patterns use 3 and some 4. Yeah, that's been really fun. And we have some more Gnome stuff up our sleeves that we're not quite ready to talk about, but we'll see it a little later in the year. Yeah.
That's all right. That's excellent. I thought that was really cute. I saw that and I said, Year of Gnomes, what's that about?
Yeah, it's I hear that they're very addictive. I've only started one. I haven't finished it yet, but I hear that once you finish your first one, you're gonna keep going with them.
Is there anything else that you wanted to share with the guild members, or anything that you wish people knew about your store, about your designs, or you?
I think one thing to just share is that we do a virtual knitting group that because of COVID, we had to move our in-person group online, and you know, we really miss seeing people in person, but it has allowed us to have people join from all over the country, all over the world. Actually, we have a customer in Japan who's showed up a couple of times, which is really so we really invite people to check that out. We have a couple more dates this spring. We do it once a month, and then we'll take a summer break, and we'll be back in the fall with that. And the other thing, just in terms of shopping on our website, all our prices are in Canadian dollars. We have flat rate shipping for I think $10 an order, and free shipping over $150. And we are really open to answering questions. So if you have a question about our yarn bases, our patterns, anything like that, thinking about placing an order and we're out of stock of something and you want to know when it's back in stock, anything like that, just send us an email and we'll try and get back to you relatively quickly.
That's excellent. I love all of it. I especially do, because when I started getting more into knitting on social media, I started following all the things, and it just very quickly became overwhelming, and I decided to focus in just on Canada. So learning about where I can find more yarn here, not even just to support Canadian businesses, but just to like narrow down the options and minimize the cost as well. Because with the taxes, it can become.
For sure. And an exchange rate is not in our favor right now.
Yeah, so I love hearing that this is growing, and I love learning about you. And one day I'll be out to Montreal.
For sure, we'd love to host you if you make it out this way. Yeah.
I just want to know who you're wearing.
Oh, so this is a pattern that is one of Elizabeth's that is actually not published right now. So it's maybe a bit more of a teaser than I meant it to be, but I was trying to find something that was clean this morning. With the little baby laundry piles up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's knit in actually the Minuet DK that I was talking about earlier. And it's a pattern that we did as exclusive for a sweater club several years ago. And we just honestly, too many other things have come up, and we never got back to actually publishing the pattern and making it more widely available. So someday that might happen.
For all those listening.
Yeah, if you love the pattern, email us, and it might be a good moment for us to be inspired to go back to it. But yeah, so that's definitely one of the like constants with me and Elizabeth and this business, is that we always have more ideas than we have time to actually bring to fruition. So that there's always a few things that get left by the wayside, and we go, well, we'll go back to that someday when we have time.
I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good sign. Yeah, it's encouraging. Yeah. Thank you so much, Debbie.
You're welcome.
That's Sweet Paprika Designs. You are a Faux Frolic 2022 vendor. You have your virtual knit-alongs and the Frolic color, which is not yet named, but will be released for Faux Frolic in partnership with a pattern.
Yes, with Michelle Porter.
Michelle Porter.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much for meeting with us today, and congratulations again on the new edition.
Thank you.